Africa is rapidly modernizing, with countless railways, bridges, ports, and even entire cities being built across the continent. A vast majority of that construction is on China's dime. The Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, or Focac, which is held every 3 years, will next take place in Beijing on September 4th. It's a big deal because the forum is traditionally when China pledges huge funding commitments for major infrastructure projects in Africa. The last Focac was held in 2021 during the COVID-19 pandemic. China's president pledged at the event to help fund immunization efforts in Africa.
22年，60%非洲人口接种新冠疫苗的目标。我宣布，中国将再向非方提供10亿剂疫苗。
The meeting brings together the highest number of African leaders into one setting to discuss issues that affect China and Africa. The summit will have 4 high-level meetings, and those meetings are state governance, industrialization and agriculture, peace and security, and high-quality Belt and Road.
Those themes would be in line with initiatives Xi unveiled during the 2023 BRICS summit involving host South Africa, as well as Brazil, Russia, India, and China. A year later at Focac, Beijing is expected to pursue a key goal of becoming less reliant on the US for agriculture products.
So there are many African countries that are now exporting agricultural products. So in the summit, you'll see more emphasis from China on how they will help Africa expand on their food production by diversifying into other markets. They mitigate those risks.
According to a 2022 study by the Peace Research Institute Oslo, China provided nearly all African countries with security force assistance in the past 2 decades. Some experts say there will be interest in how China plans to deal with political volatility on the African continent.
Peace and security will be a major theme on how China can help those African countries resolve some of the conflicts. I mean, some of those countries have had conflicts, so China appointed an envoy to help with conflict resolution.
China's Belt and Road Initiative is also expected to be a top priority at the forum. In recent years, Beijing began scaling back large infrastructure projects, pivoting instead to what it calls small but beautiful additions to the initiative. That's after a number of major infrastructure projects encountered financial problems that drew international attention. That also came as some African countries have sought debt relief from major creditors. Some experts say China is more likely to focus on smaller, less risky, and more profitable projects with environmental and social benefits.
It's encouraging something we call build, operate, then transfer kind of model. Those are public-private partnerships where Chinese companies are now building those projects, and then they they operate some of those projects for a number of years to recoup their investments. There are a number of examples where now Chinese companies are either taking equity into some of those African projects or they are funding. I mean, they look for funds, build, then operate. And this model has a lot of support from the Chinese government.
That pivot also comes as China reduced its financial pledges following the US-China trade war and the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2015 and 2018, China pledged about $60 billion to Africa. But in 2021, Beijing only promised Africa about $40 billion.
In the past few years, we have seen subdued economic growth in China. I mean, the real estate crisis that has affected consumption for some of the materials that come from Africa into the Chinese real estate or infrastructure industry. That could be one of the reasons why in the past few years we have seen declining financial commitments to African countries.
Despite the reduced financial pledges, experts say China is still determined to maintain economic ties with Africa. And to do so, Beijing is experimenting with new strategies to make those ties more sustainable and resilient.